Hello and welcome to KamenRider Blackman. Whew, I am now excited to do this. And so sit tight and be ready because it is another full show review. Because today I'm doing the grandfather of the name of my channel. That's right. Today I'm doing Kamen Rider Black. Now, when I started doing YouTube, my channel name was called the TNT channel. But there are like a bajillion other TNT channels on YouTube. So I need to change my name to stand out so that it wouldn't be so hard to look me up on here. And so, Kamen Rider Black, Kamen Rider Blackman, to which, by the way, has been a show that I have wanted to review and just watch in general since I've started this channel. So now we're finally getting to do it. And so, going into Kamen Rider Black, when I got into this show and in the middle of it, I had really mixed feelings about it. But once I absolutely finished the show, I was distraught and I understood why people really seem to like this show. But don't get me wrong, I do like this show, but even I will admit it does have some flaws, and we will get to them as we talk about the show right now. So, getting into it, let's talk about the opening. The opening theme song for the show, it's not bad. Like, in my opinion, I guess maybe the singer could be a bit better, but I like the lyrics, and I like the beat. The ending theme song, on the other hand, the closing theme song, on the other hand, is beautiful. I think the singer, who is, by the way, the main writer of the show, Tetsuya Kurata, when he does the closing theme song, it's beautiful. That's where his style and range of singing works, and the lyrics are magnificent. Although they don't really tell a story, it's good description of being alive and enjoying what's around you. So now, let's talk about the show. Starting off with Episode 1, Black Transformation. Before we are introduced to a certain person, we first see 3 white figures in cloaks, and before anyone says anything, it's not the KKK. Alright, let's get that straight. The 3 white figures are after a man that's ducking, hiding, and running away from them. He's eventually caught, and we learn the stranger's name, and he is our main protagonist of the show, Kotaro Minami. And he will... Now, Kotaro's abducted and brought back to a lab where he is, well, he's being turned into a cyborg. And by now, I should mention the organization name, and the organization behind this as well, which is Gorgum. Alright, so let's dial this back first. Yes, Kotaro was modified and turned into a cyborg, and so is his brother, Nobuhiko. Pay attention to him. And they weren't just kidnapped and experimented on. Their father offered them to Gorgum so that they can both become Gorgum's 2-century kings. So, and before getting into any further detail with that, first of all, worst dad ever. Hell, you know what the first episode of Ultraman Mebius is? Father of Ultra sends the newest Ultraman to Earth, EI, one of his sons, to go fight evil. This guy, on the other hand, went right away and said, take my sons and physically change them into wherever the hell you want. And I almost forgot to mention this too. They were looking to turn him into a cyborg. They did that already. But he's not evil or anything. Anywho, they didn't brainwash. So what I mean by that is they didn't brainwash him yet. And so leading into the next thing. Why is brainwashing the last step? You turn him into a cyborg and you brain. Do you know how many times Power Rangers has gotten that right? Like, make them evil first, then give them powers. Like, whatever. I'm just saying, in 1987, when this show came out, I don't know, it must have been the time of, oh, what could possibly go wrong? Anyway, and with that part explained to us as a flashback, that part's explained to us now as a flashback because now the three Gorgon priests, which here are their names right now. There's Bishidum, the woman, Darum, who's the white-faced one, and Barum, the one with the green mask. And so, the three priests literally throw Kotaro into a wall or something. Well, they throw him around to prove to him that he's a lot more than human. And once they let him go through a wall, he goes through a wall and comes back transforming. He starts off in some mutant grasshopper form that's crawling, getting back up. And then we see his rider form as Kamen Rider Black. So, let's talk about the suit. I'm not gonna lie, this might be my favorite suit in the Showa era. Black's suit is pretty interesting. And here's the thing, I think if you've seen my video before about top 10 Kamen Rider costumes, first of all, go check that video out. And second, what I talk about in that video is how Heisei Kamen Rider suits nowadays are pretty bulky and are designed more for a more round-figured person. But all the suits back from the Showa era, they're designed for more average, slim-figured riders. And Black's is pretty good. It's not too bad. Like, I like the helmet. I like that part he has down, that one metal part down the bottom that looks like that platinum piece that looks sort of purple or metallic purple. And I also like the colors that are really on his suit. There's black, red, and gold. But here's another critique I just need to get off my chest. That gold looks like it's yellow, and just throwing that out there, gold should not look yellow. And so while I'm also on a Mac, oh yeah, Black also happens to get a bike in the first episode as well. So let's talk about it. Battle Hopper. The bike was designed for him for when he becomes a Century King, but he got the bike before that happens, and now becomes his ally. So let's talk about Battle Hopper. It's a dirt bike, and sorry, now I'm just pulling up a picture of Battle Hopper. But either way, let's think about it. Battle Hopper, it's not too bad. Okay, here it is. Here's Battle Hopper. Yeah. It's not... Okay, I'm sorry, now I just pulled up a better picture. Either way, Battle Hopper, it's not bad. They really somewhat shoehorned in there the grasshopper motif for the bike. But it's not terrible. I'll give you that. It's not terrible. To which, another interesting thing about Battle Hopper, the bike is sentient. It's alive. It has personality. Well, I don't know if I'd go as far as say that that has personality, but it does have artificial intelligence and can even communicate with them, even though we don't really understand it. But Once Battlehopper finds Kotaro, they escape, and Kotaro meets up with his dad, who later reveals to us that it's actually his adoptive father. So, more backstory. Kotaro and Nobuhiko were both born on the same day during a solar eclipse, which made them the perfect candidates for Gorgum later. Nobuhiko's father was a colleague was a ah Nobuhiko's father was a colleague of Kotaro's biological father. Both of them were cannot talk today. They were both archaeologists who were struggling to find money for their research, and one day stumbled upon the idea of working for Gorgum so that they could survive once they take over the world. This is all years ago, by the way, when Kotaro and Nobuhiko are infants. Now, Nobuhiko's dad says, "Alright, I'm in," but Kotaro's dad refuses them and then kills Kotaro's parents, which is really fucked up when you think about it, because the whole time he believed his parents were killed in an accident, and it turns out that it was Gorgum that did it. And so, Gorgum attacks again with a horde of spider mutants because Gorgum must have decided to kill the dad by dropping him from a water tower. And I'm not kidding when I say that. They decide that they're going to kill the dad since he served his purpose, or because he frickin' betrayed them after they made a deal. And they drop him from a water tower. Like, even after Kotaro reaches out to save him, he still must have had a very hard fall. And his adoptive father dies right there in his arms, and as his father asks him to protect his little sister. And so, Kotaro, in a rage, transforms and vows to fight Gorgum as Kamen Rider Black. And so, while I'm getting into the first episode, by now, I might as well mention there are two more characters: Nobuhiko's girlfriend, Katsumi, and Nobuhiko's biological sister and Kotaro's adoptive sister, Kyoko, who will serve as the side characters that are really close to Kotaro for the show. Now, the first episode, I'll admit, is pretty dark, working on the whole sci-fi horror angle. Like, imagine having this evil cult on your ass for your whole life just so this shit could happen. You proclaim you're a Kamen Rider without the word ever being... And then you... Oh yeah, this is the joke I wrote while I was writing this. And then you proclaim you're a Kamen Rider without the word ever even brought up, because you do so. Anywho, so now, episode 2. Now that Gorgum is aware of Kotaro's retaliation, to be ahead of the game, Kotaro moves his sister and his self out of their house now that it's not safe there from Gorgum. So in this episode, we just learned more about Kotaro and Nobuhiko and how they got kidnapped. All that does come out is that Gorgum has plenty of human servants on their side, as well as well-known scientific figures, and even a celebrity is part of Gorgum, who almost spoils the plan about what they were planning to do to them. So, it just goes to show how proactive Gorgum is on such a scale, because once Kotaro goes looking for answers about their party, he finds the actress, and the monster of that episode kills her before he gets to her. And that's the law of Gorgum. You're expendable until you've served your purpose. Now, I'm going to take one quick drink of water. Now, not a lot happens right now as I'm describing it because the next 9 episodes are filler up until episodes 12 and 13. Because in episode 12, Black gets a new bike called the Road Sector from a father and child whose grandfather was just like anyone else, was a part of Gorgum, but the grandfather and the father's wife were both killed, but because the three Gorgum priests wanted to use the bike and the father for a motorcycle riding armada, and the grandfather, having sense, instead said hell no. So let's talk about the bike. The episode, on the other hand, was fine because it's more in depth about Gorgum's history of using humans. So anyway, the Road Sector. It's honestly kind of fine. He has a secondary bike. That's okay. And actually, it's actually quite fun. It's actually sort of a good idea now that he has two bikes, sort of. Like, the Road Sector is good for when Battle Hopper is not strong enough or fast enough for some situations. Well, the Road Sector is. But on the other hand, the Road Sector can't do a bunch of things that a dirt bike can do. So that's where Battle Hopper is more useful. But as for the design of the bike itself, I'm a little curious now. Like, what if the bike was black and had like his color scheme going on with black, red, and yellow, gold? That's just an interesting idea that I have. Maybe it'd be too dark, but the bike itself alone, like, it's fine for the most part. And as for episode 13, while fighting a crab mutant, Kamen Rider Black's finisher, the Rider Punch, wasn't effective, and he trains and creates an even stronger Rider Punch. Now, I guess I can take them. I guess that's like the next thing I can talk about since there's not a lot of plot happening. Black's finishers, the Rider Punch and his Rider Kick, both aren't that bad. Both aren't bad. I actually quite like seeing them happen because he works his way up to it. Like, I can't find the words for it, so all I can do is the movements. But yeah, the Rider Punch and the Rider Kick, I'm not gonna lie, they're not bad. And, they're not bad. Pretty flashy. And sometimes he'll do, like, both moves in an episode. Like, he'll paralyze someone with the Rider Punch, and then ultimately finishes them off with the Rider Kick. Or most times he'll just finish them with the Rider Punch alone. But that's that. Now, despite all the filler there are some episodes that stand out, and some standout one-off characters in this show that we see more than once. One is an Interpol agent who's a close friend of Nobuhiko's named Ryusuke Taki, who follows Gorgum's actions, and on a more international level, because in one episode we learn that Gorgum actually gets around using people wherever for their ambitions, and the other is a group of little boys who happen to be 5 scientists who made a deal with Gorgum to be immortal, they made a deal with them to be immortal and instead got turned into children. That group of little boys, it starts off as 5, but then in the first episode where we see them, one of them dies because of a monster. And so, the next time we see them, they're training themselves to fight Gorgum. Like, I don't remember the episode number, but we see one on a dirt bike. We see one practicing fighting, and they have guns that are effective, and they're called Gorgum's shonen warriors. Now, they're not bad, but they aren't entirely effective against a single kaijin because they're still children. What I say is, for those that have joined Gorgum, they have all paid a price. They have either died, have survived, and or has someone close to them be killed because of them disobeying. Now, for as much filler as there is, and there are episodes when we see people like willingly work for Gorgum and rebel against them. Speaking of which, there's one like villain of Gorgum who's human and willingly chose to join them, but he doesn't last long, and that's Professor Kuromatsu, a Nobel Prize winning scientist who is willingly part of Gorgum so that he can become a mutant and live longer because mutants have a long lifespan. So, of course, once again, mutants aren't really all that immortal because they can be killed. And so, episode 18, the Creation King gets fed. So, let's explain now. The Creation King, right now, he's the main villain. He's sort of the big bad, the one in charge of Gorgum. He gets fed up with the 3 high priestess failures and demands them to open a sealed coffin holding a new villain that'll help them beat Black, and that is the Sword Saint Biruginia, who is quite powerful and quite pissed for a particular reason. Now, here's the reason. He was born 30,000 years ago and was a candidate for being a century king, and he is quite bitter about not being picked. And the reason why, I think I explained this before or earlier, or at least I'll explain it now. Like both Kotaro and Nobuhiko, they're both qualified candidates to be a century king because they were both born on the same day around a certain time, and it's all set up so that they would both eventually fight to the death on who would be the next king. So I thought I'd just mention that now. Now, for Biruginia, as a swordsman, he walks straight through Black for the first time they fought, which brings me to another thing later. Well, for later, but at the moment, with the 2 girls, Kyoko and Katsumi, Kotaro and Nobuhiko, like I said, I mentioned them. Yeah, Kotaro and Nobuhiko's sister and Nobuhiko's girlfriend. I'm pretty sure at this point, or at least in this episode, they know that he's Black, because in the same episode, they talk about Kamen Rider Black and how he's a close friend of Kotaro's, and later in that episode, Kotaro comes home injured after his first fight with Biruginia. And so, no one else there doesn't, which it should be pretty obvious, because no one else there doesn't talk about Gorgum as much as he does, by the way. But hey, I saw that she knew who he was and was happy that someone put 2 and 2 together, because sometimes people don't do that. And so, before I forget, Professor Kuromatsu, in the next episode, Biruginia steals his appearance for a plan, and then he dies off screen. And so, back to more filler. It's just, this is the part of the show that I was really mixed feelings about, because there's a lot of filler in this show. Like, nothing really happened until later, but that could just be me. But then again, I walked into the show hearing good things about it, and it made me excited to see. And despite me repeating myself, there are still episodes of this show that I do actually like. Trust me. And at the moment, while we're not that far in the story, Gorgum as an organization is scary because most of their plans are terrorist attacks and manipulating people to make us look bad so that we'll destroy each other. And they have their results. But once again, once we get to a certain individual, that's going to change. And so, finally moving forward to episode 34, shit gets real. But first, let's talk about Nobuhiko. He and Kotaro in episode 1 were kidnapped to be altered and one day forced to fight to see who would be the next Century King, as that's what started the show. I mention it now because Nobuhiko's been with Gorgum the entire time, comatose, since his surgery was completed, and he's been asleep. He's reserved energy to eventually wake up, and in this episode, Gorgum forms a plan to abduct Kyoko to use her life force essence to wake up her brother. Granted, they've done this before, and they haven't done this since then. They haven't done anything about it since then. But go watch that episode. They even point that out. And while that's happening, the current Creation King calls out Birugenia about obtaining a certain weapon in this locked room. And it is the Satan Saber. And with the Satan Saber, first of all, he has to walk through fucking fire to even get the sword. I am not kidding when I say that. It's literally a trial by fire. And it's hot. And it's hot when you think about it. Because imagine that happening to you. Like, you yourself are literally walking through fire, burning your face to get a hell-induced sword. Like, first thing Birugenia does is disrupt the plan, leaving the Creation King pretty pissed off, as he now demands the priests to surrender their own versions of Black's Kingstones to revive Nobuhiko. They do so, and they soon age decrepitly. And this is all part 1. Now, before I talk about any action, first, tremendous acting. Because one, I didn't mention this earlier, Black and Birugenia had a fight saving Kyoko, and both Kyoko and Kotaro plummet to the ground with Kyoko fine and Rider unconscious. When I mean earlier, I mean episode 34, the last episode, so I'm saying it now because this is where it gets really interesting. And while hiding from Birugenia, there is one scene where both Kyoto and Kotaro are hiding Kotaro and Kyoko, they're both hiding in a cave and have a heart-to-heart with Kotaro revealing he's Kamen Rider Black, and Kyoko admitting she knew for a while now, and that he has her full support. And this scene, I really questioned this episode at first, but after I thought it over on second watch, I felt the hardship of it a lot more and wrapped it up. Like, you'd think we'd be off guard for what happens next, but no, because we're having a moment of realization and acceptance. There are possibilities in the future. Speaking of which, of the future, Black and Birugenia have one final fight until the Satan Saber is taken away from Birugenia, and he returns to Gorgum, where our second century king candidate has finally awakened. Nobuhiko has finally come back, but as Shadow Moon. And per usual, let's talk about Shadow Moon's luck. I really like his suit because he is owning the grasshopper motif with the legs at the bottom and looking completely robotic. It's just so... It's a menacing contrast to Black's look, and that just makes it the much more fearful of it. And so, Shadow Moon finally enters the picture, and what is the first thing he does? He steals the Satan Saber. Right after killing Birugenia. Good on him. Like, at the very end of episode 35, Kotaro and Shadow Moon meet for the first time, and both sides are fully aware of the situation. Like, because Shadow Moon now takes lead of Gorgum, and Kotaro is fully aware of Shadow Moon. He's not even surprised or shocked. It's been building up to this, so Kotaro shouldn't be shocked or horrified. Like, his mindset right now is, I know exactly who you are. And that about wraps up episode 35. Making the new status quo. Making the new status quo. Shadow Moon's introduction is impressive. We know who he really is. It's been built up to it. And furthermore, he takes action like it's his own business. He may have some sense of who he used to be, but that's all covered up with how threatening he is. Like, I can't describe it, but Shadow Moon just has something about him that's legitimately something to be scared of. But he's not the only one to be scared of in the next episode, which is episode 36. Kyoko and Katsumi are made aware of Shadow Moon, and Shadow Moon gets aware of them because Kyoko and Katsumi go inside their old home to visit, and Shadow Moon pops up out of nowhere there. Like, he doesn't hurt them or anything. Like, instead of killing them, he lays down the line that he wants to become the next century king and take over the world, and in the process, save his loved ones. Kyoko outright refuses, but Katsumi hesitates, and I like that. It shows how manipulative Shadow Moon is. Before getting into this, there's something I forgot to mention. Like, at least for the most part, because I do have my critiques. Now, everything is fine. My only thing with Shadow Moon's introduction is that they've kidnapped Kyoko before to do the same plan, and they don't do it again until later. But turns out they can use alternatives to wake up Shadow Moon. So as opposed to 16 episodes of just standard filler, they could have built up on Shadow Moon getting introduced. Like, have some episodes focus on gathering power and energy to wake up Shadow Moon, And as soon as episode 35 comes along, boom. Because here's how foreshadowing works. You don't play with it for too long or people will get bored and not care. I'm not saying that foreshadowing for Shadow Moon should be constant, but make it at an appropriate amount where it's set in mind. Now that I'm done critiquing, I'm gonna show a picture of the villains that we've been focusing on up till now, the three high priests. It's gonna be here. Like, you see them? And is anyone a little confused on which is which because the cloaks? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to say so, because now in the picture I'm showing, you can tell the difference between them, because sacrificing their stones caused them to age rapidly but soon get a power boost and change in appearance to go along with Shadow Moon, and with now Shadow Moon being in charge. God, I really need to learn how to talk. Anyway, now that I've come to a realization through episodes 34 and 36, and you know what that realization is? It's, where was this? What is this show? The story's excellent. Everyone's on their game. There's real tension. This is the show I wanted to watch that everyone was talking about. Not all the filler episodes with plans that'll be forgotten about by the next episode. Like, one big tension that I will mention, because the show says it out loud, it's the possibility of Black and Shadow Moon having to fight. Because yeah, Shadow Moon's evil, but Shadow Moon is Nobuhiko. The same Nobuhiko that we saw from episode 1. And the same Nobuhiko that's been missing all this time, with everyone worried about him. And Kotaro, most of all, really does not want to end up fighting him. I thought that was enough to say, at least now, without giving anything away. Now, with that said, episode 34 going on, this show really gets good, and it really gets good in general. However, there are 2 episodes in this run that are bad, but I'll talk about the one that matters a bit more. And give me 1 second first. Episode 45 is without a doubt, in my mind, the most sexist, misogynistic, bitter, and overall offensive piece of tokusatsu that I've ever seen, and I completely blame Junichi Miyashita for writing this episode, and here is why. First of all, the first half of this episode is a plan on distracting women from their natural duties, and it basically plays on stereotypes, showing it affecting only housewives, schoolgirls, and preschool teachers. Fuck that episode. And to make it worse, / have a mixed feeling, this episode is Bishium's plan, and she dies in this episode. In the middle of a battle, she holds Black down so that Shadow Moon could kill Black as well as herself, so that he can get the Kingstone. And Shadow Moon does it. He shoots and Black moves out of the way. He still gets shot while Bishium takes a lot more damage to the laser shooting her. The only reason why Shadow Moon stopped when he did was because Kyoko was there. And boom, Bishium dies, which angers the Creation King, and he takes it out on everyone, including Shadow Moon. As this now starts the endgame of the show, as we move on to episode 46, with Barham's next to go, while there's a mutant assigned with Barham to beat Rider, named the Whale Mutant, so some explanation on him. Both, like, Darum and Barham saw a vision into the future where Gorgum rules, and the oceans are destroyed by the debris. And that naturally concerns Whale Mutant because he's a whale. He lives in the ocean. So when he fights Black, Barham's there and he's ready to kill Black and Whale Mutant. And while he also attacks Whale Mutant, just stabbing him with two fangs as daggers that he just pulled out of nowhere, Kotaro quickly sympathizes with the Kaijin right before ultimately killing Barham. Now, right before everything wraps up, that doesn't happen, so the Whale Mutant ends up being a new character, and episode 46 basically ends in terror of Shadow Moon stepping foot on Earth, terrorizing people, and challenging Kotaro to a fight to the death. And now, no one told me about this one. Episode 47, The Rider Dies. You don't hear about this. After seeing all the chaos and needing someone to die, Kotaro is now convinced to fight Shadow Moon, and Kyoko's all for it because she's like, this isn't my brother anymore, go do what you gotta do. So the next day, it's fighting day. It takes place in a rock quarry because Power Rangers. Kidding. I also need a drink of water. Kotaro begs one last time for Shadow Moon to turn back to Nobuhiko. And be careful what you wish for, because they fight. And first of all, it's a really good fight. And in my opinion, I think it's because of the hand-to-sword fighting. Because either way, it's repeatedly Kotaro using flying maneuvers and Shadow Moon waving his sword to shoot through them. And this fight also starts a trend of what I believe is the Creation King manipulating Shadow Moon. Because when when Black gets the upper hand, Shadow Moon turns back into Nobuhiko and he freezes, leaving him open to strike and then go back to Shadow Moon. Like, what? 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 Like, you can't do that crap and just think it's fly afterwards. That's a huge level of maniacal shit right there. Like what I said, if it was him or not, Shadow Moon didn't care. Thus thrusting us to the title of the episode, The Rider Dies. Our protagonist dies. He's stabbed to death where the sword is right above the Kingstone. Stabbed to death. Realizing he's killed, the Rider, this piece of Shadow Moon, acts different because instead of ripping out Black's Kingstone, he goes, nah, I don't need it, and leaves. Yeah, turns out he needs it because without both Kingstones, Shadow Moon's included, he can't properly become the next Century King, and the Creation King will die along with anything possessing his powers, including Shadow Moon. Why does this shock me, and why doesn't it shock me? Because the Creation King didn't explain why he needed both stones before. He just kept repeating to himself, like, go get the stone, kill him, get the stone, without even it giving an explanation as to why. Those facts are important. I'm just saying. So yeah, Black's dead, and the Earth being a life force itself. Go watch my review of Tenso Sentai Go Seicher to understand why I say that. Gives Black a burial at sea, only for the whale mutant to find him and use his knowledge of science to bring him back to life 2 episodes later. So now, episode 49. Let's right now do a progress check. Gorgum has now, in Japan, Gorgum now has Japan in fear and have basically taken over. And this is resulting in Kyoko and Katsumi being forced to move to America to get away from Gorgum's liberation. Because Gorgum / humanity of Japan have really fucked up the place. Like, this really leaves me bothered to ask, how does one take over the world? Because it's apparently very complicated if they just stayed in Japan. Not to mention, this is a tokusatsu show experiencing the closest thing to the apocalypse. So humanity automatically is the worst and displays reason as to why Gorgum should take over. Not that I agree with it, but in Super Sentai, villain group after villain group plan to take over because they say humans are the worst, and this is feeding that. Anywho, when we see Kotaro and the whale mutant, a group of humans, make a deal with Darum to be spared if they capture him, they did, and of course, Darum breaks the deal and wants them dead too. You idiots. The whale mutant's fine, but the last of the great mutants, Darum, dies, and faith has been restored back into humanity. Now, episode 50. The whale mutant, still injured from last time, leads Kotaro to Gorgum's headquarters. Gorgum ambushes and separates them, and we see Kotaro and Shadow Moon together in the inner depths of Gorgum to watch Whale Mutant get murdered by another mutant to mainly fuck with Kotaro, because Shadow Moon doesn't care. He'll use that to be an asshole. The moment they actually fight the Creation King, he teleports them to a green valley. Like, Kotaro pleads to Shadow Moon about the earth and animals and flowers and how they're all alive and whatnot. And you know what Shadow Moon has to say about it? Fuck the trees, fuck the flowers, and fuck these animals. I'm gonna take over the universe, and burns the valley. That's that. That is Shadow Moon. He, like what I said, he doesn't care. He just said, screw all this. Does it make you unhappy? Good, because I'm gonna take over everything anyway. Like, he does not care. And that's why I like him so much. The moment I think he's not going to do something and they pan out the episode, he does it. And I just look at him like, you're real. So, now, officially giving up hope of saving Nobuhiko, Kotaro transforms into Black, and they fight, and Shadow Moon even summons... You ready? Are you ready for this? Tell me right now if you're ready for this. Battle Hopper. Which makes sense because Battle Hopper wasn't designed especially to serve under Kotaro. It was created for whomever becomes the next century king. And now we've entered the final episode. Episode 51, Gorgum's Last Day. And it hurt me to see Battle Hopper rebel against Shadow Moon just so Shadow Moon could lacerate him. Like, watching the Satan Saber just obliterate Battle Hopper for some odd reason made me want to hurl because he was a dead man walking. Battle Hopper was, and in his condition, he rammed himself into Shadow Moon, sacrificing himself, and I about died and I realized why I felt so sick watching it. It was like looking at a human corpse. Cause just, oh my god, why the bike? Battle Hopper sacrificed himself to successfully injure Shadow Moon. Oh my god. I felt so sad just thinking about it, and I feel so sad thinking about it now. I think, like, Shadow Moon afterwards, he gets away because first, yeah, because after Battle Hopper rams into him, he's pretty injured. He gets pretty injured, and Shadow Moon, he retreats afterwards. And before moving on, Hopper he spoke in perfect English where we can understand him for the first time, says, "Thank you, Ryder," and then he dies. Like, yeah. They killed off the bike. Like, seriously, Battle Hopper may have been a machine, but it was sentient, so it had actual intelligence and everything, and they just killed him off. It was like looking at an actual person die laying there, and because he was an actual character. Moving on, thanks to Battle Hopper, Black got an opportunity to fatally injure Shadow Moon more and did it. It's like the final episode of this show is heartbreaking because you want to sympathize so much for what happened to everyone. And in the middle of the attack, Shadow Moon retreats and forgets the Satan Saber. And that was the last mistake he ever made. Black picks up the Satan Saber and follows him back, and then it became sudden death. With Black having the Satan Saber, Shadow Moon does his own version of a rider kick, but in his condition, it's suicidal. Like, even Black warns him not to do it. But Shadow Moon does the kick, and Black slashes clean through his Kingstone, which does him in. Yeah. And on the verge of death, Shadow Moon requests for the Shadow Saber to take with him to hell. And so Black does so. And this is when Shadow Moon makes himself infamous. He is well known to this day, one of the best Kamen Rider villains, looks at the hero, the victor, and says, "You may have stopped me, but you also just killed your own brother, so live with that." And just takes that to his grave. That dude, to just make it bittersweet, like, you won, congratulations, at the cost of your own best friend. And the show's not over yet. We still have one more villain to deal with. And it's the Creation King, which, by the way, it's just some floating heart. The eh. He makes a threat of one final scheme to destroy the world, and Black takes the Satan Saber and stabs him to death. So, quote, battle fever joke there. So, the fighting's over. Everything's back to normal. Everyone's gone. All of Kotaro's friends, all of Kotaro's closest friends, they're either away from him for their own safety, or in Nobuhiko's case, dead. And the show officially ends with Kotaro on his motorcycle, just riding off because he's alone. And that's the show. It got dark. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's like it took a break from being dark and then it got dark. But either way, the final episode of this show, it is such a roller coaster of emotions because it's like it's the final episode. We won. Should be happy. No. It's bittersweet. I need to take a quick drink of water. So, let's talk about these characters. Alright, so, first, our hero, Kotaro. I think he's great. Like, he's the stereotypical serious and stoic character, but because he really cares for his friends, that's not who he entirely is. Like, he's serious at times, but when he's not serious, he's quite playful, and it's like, and you understand how he is because he's doing a job. He has to watch out for everything and everyone. And so he knows when to dial it back to be friendly. And but Kotaro alone, he's a good example of almost every victim of Gorgum in this show, but wrapped in one. Because with everyone just trying to run away, he couldn't. This is something he had to do and no one else could. And it's a good thing that he unfortunately later, once others learned of his identity, that he didn't have to bear it all alone. Now, I would talk about Kyoko and Katsumi, but I don't know. They're not bad. They're not terrible. Like, if anything, I like Kyoko a bit more. She really is that great supportive character because because once they found out that Kotaro is still alive when the show's not over yet, she wanted to go back to Japan just to see Kotaro, but can't for her own safety. Katsumi, on the other hand, she's not awful, but she felt at times a bit too much like a damsel in distress. But, I don't know, that's just me. Now, let's move on to the villains. Shadow Moon. He's awesome. Like, Shadow Moon is flat out awesome. His suit is amazing. Who he is, his attitude, he's just so freaking amazing. Shadow Moon is so scary. Like, earlier this morning, when I was getting ready for the day, I was afraid to look out of my window because I was afraid of Shadow Moon being there. Like, that's the kind of scary he is. I'm not even kidding. But yeah, and he's that Shadow Moon. He truly is that villain you love to hate, and I really like him so much more. So, next, I guess I can talk about these guys. The three high priests. They were good villains. Despite all the filler episodes and whatnot, these were good villains. And it's even better because as villains, they get better once the show gets more dark and serious. And so, that has been Kamen Rider Black. Like what I said, I had some real mixed feelings about this show because at first, while I was really getting into the show, it was coming off as okay to me. But once episode 34 hit, it got so much better. And now, I really, honestly, I understand why people really like the show. Because now, I really like this show. But ultimately, it's the last arc it's the last arc that makes this show. And so, if you really wanted to try and enjoy it, it would be like, for starters, you would have to skip all the filler and only get to all the important episodes, which have been the ones that I chose to talk about in this review. But with that into consideration, as well as some good filler episodes that there really are in this show, this show is still amazing and it's highly recommended. I seriously recommend anyone to watch this show. Give Kamen Rider Black a chance. Yeah, there's a lot of filler, but I'm pretty sure if you're like me or not like me, you can get past it. And so, that is the review. Now, what is my next show to do next month? I might as well. I'm not gonna lie. It was originally going to be Denziman, but when I first looked it up today, I don't think it's subbed. So instead, I will be doing Ryukendo. So, next month, look forward to Madan Senki Ryukendo. Alright, so I guess now it's time to do the outro. Well, thank you guys for watching my review of Kamen Rider Black. It's just, now I really dig this show. With everything I said about it, and with so much considerations for it, as well as what really makes the show good, this whole season, it's really worth watching. So, thank you for watching my review of it, and please, go check out Kamen Rider Black. And as always, thank you for watching, and please do not forget to like, subscribe, share this video, and go ahead and tell your friends about Kamen Rider Blackman. I do full show reviews every month. I do a different show, and I bounce back between Sentai, Kamen Rider, or any type of tokusatsu show. And so, if you wanted to see some more content like that, please, if you have any suggestions, please feel free to tell me in the comments down below. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.